So, fuck yes, welcome after the hype. Brian Dressel with Chewy Darso.
Hi.
And Emily Blake.
Hi, I didn't watch the movie.
Just coming right out of the gate swinging with it. There might have been a bit of a
Just
communication.
embrace your shame.
Bit of a communication snafu, and Emily ignored the wrong movie. She was still not going to watch the movie for the week.
Which movie did you watch?
I've seen Three
Yeah,
Billboards.
true.
Oh.
I thought it was Three Billboards. This
Yeah.
week.
Okay.
So today's episode will it'll be a little different
I'm
than
going to be a
normal.
surrogate for the audience and ask questions.
Yeah, it's gonna be fine. And special guest this week we have Elliot Campos back.
Hey,
Hi, Elliot. Elliot, have you watched the movie?
unfortunately.
Oh no, I actually kind of enjoyed it, but we'll.
Of course you did,
Yeah.
Brian.
Oh, it's a movie. Elliot and I disagree. No way.
It's a bad movie that Brian enjoyed. Shocking.
It's
not a bad
we'll
I
get
don't
into
know.
it.
I haven't
We'll-
seen it, so that's not fair for me to say.
It's not a good movie. I'll give it that much. But we'll get into that. But before we do, we should do a Where Have You Been Doing? I wanted to talk Quiet Place.
So I'll just talk about it with you then.
Okay, well then I won't talk Quiet Place.
Well, then, I already
wanted
used
to
my other
talk,
movie.
Horizon Zero Dawn.
Okay, fine.
I can do that. And I'll chime in my one thing about Quiet Place when you do that. So I've started playing Horizon Zero Dawn, which you've heard discussed to death in this podcast if you listen weekly, as John was playing it for like 3 months straight. That was the only thing he was doing. So there's not really much to say about it. And then the one thing I don't think John mentioned when he was talking about it is the pacing of the game is impeccable. It was pitched to me as Assassin's Creed with robot dinosaurs, and it is not that. It is, and that's like the first 2 hours of the game. I was like, yeah, that's pretty much what it is. But it tells a story about a woman growing up with basically like no home and no people very well, and it like doles out the story moments far better than almost any game I've ever played. Like they really know how to like take their time and let things reveal naturally, and it's really cool.
She looks a lot like Ygritte from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, with way bigger hair, but yeah, her hair is huge, and I actually think it's kind of cool. But that's all I'm really going to say on it is because I feel we've discussed it to death at this point. But it's an awesome game.
All right. Other than that, Brian and I went to A Quiet Place on our wedding anniversary to go watch two beautiful people that are also married do their jobs.
Yeah,
And as pretty much everyone is saying, it's a really good movie.
it is.
And especially for a horror film, because we've kind of had a lull the last year, I think. I can't remember.
We've been getting like one a year, like
Yeah.
one good horror film a
one
year.
really
for a
good
while.
horror film. And, like the last movie that I remember Brian and I going like, that was a lot better than I was expecting was Annabelle Origins.
Yeah,
Which
shouldn't have been
actually
good.
is a legitly good horror film. And also stars a lot of women. And this one, I mean, I always love Emily Blunt. She's amazing in everything. John Krasinski, he's been trying to get away from being
Jim Halpert.
Jim Halpert for so long. And for the longest time, he was just making military films and wasn't really working. And now he plays a dad in a horror film. And there you are. There you are, Jim. Or not Jim. Sorry.
There you are, not Jim.
There you are, John. This is a problem that you have the same beginning letter.
Yeah.
It's a one-syllable name.
Yeah.
Yep.
And as a first-time director and co-writer of the screenplay, right?
Yeah, not the story, the screenplay.
That's why I said
Yeah.
screenplay.
And I'm just clarifying for the audience.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing more stuff from him. It was the first Platinum Dunes movie I think I've ever enjoyed. Like, oh my god, Michael Bay has a name on something and I liked it. Shit. It is nice that it is a movie about not being able to speak and actually stars a legitimately deaf character. And
she's great.
She was a great actress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deaf actor?
Yeah, she's deaf.
Deaf actress. But if you,
You can say actor. It's okay.
yeah, I know, but some people want you to really define it.
And some don't. It's a weird argument.
Yeah, like it really depends on which performer you're talking to. But yeah, she was fantastic, and it just motivated me some more. We're like, we need to freaking learn sign language.
Yeah. Our son will know sign language, so he can say when he's done eating.
Yeah, so he can talk to me before he has vocal cords.
He already has vocal cords. We'll hear
Well,
those plenty.
Whatever. All right, go Emily, go.
I read volume 4 of Sunstone, which I forgot to bring because it's Brian's book, and I put it next to my purse, and then still forgot to bring it out the door. I'd read the previous 3 before. Sunstone, for those of you who don't know, is a graphic novel, and it's about BDSM. It's about these 2 women who are in a sub-dom relationship and about like struggling against like admitting that they have feelings for each other. They keep trying to pretend like they're just friends who fuck each other, and it's becoming way more than that. And it's really sexy, like a lot of like pretty intense sex scenes in there between two women. So a lot of dudes will be reading it with their hands on their dicks, is the first guy who gave me one of those books said. I read that book with my hand on my cock. It's actually really delightful. It's a beautiful book, and it is about a love story between two women and the struggles they go through. And it's a very accurate look at what dominant submission really is. I mean, it's a bit extreme because some of the toys they play with are some high level shit. And their relationship also starts very quickly. But it's a really, really cool because it's also not just about being titillating. It's also about the development of like how you feel about this lifestyle, and some people get what's called sub frenzy, and they're very like they discover it, and then all they want to do is just submit to someone right away, and there's danger in that, and the feeling that dominants have sometimes about not being adequate, that's in there too, and there's a lot of fetish gear too. There's a lot of ladies dressing up in costumes, so it's a pretty good book. I like it a lot.
Written and drawn by a man, which is interesting.
It is, yeah, but he does a really good job of making it.
Sometimes men can be sensitive.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Oh, there's definitely still like, woo, lesbians fucking, you know, but
which they call out in like the very first page of the first book of like, this is a very romantic story about love, but don't go away. There's a lot of lesbians fucking in it too. And I really enjoy that series. Mm-hmm. And then he just did a long stint on Aquaman, and he drew Aquaman better than almost anyone has ever drawn Aquaman. And I love that.
Yeah, the art on this book is beautiful.
So good.
Yeah.
He also did a long stint on Suicide Squad, and he drew one of the best Harley Quinns I've ever seen. I really like this guy. I should probably say who it is. It's Stefan Sejek, I think is how you pronounce it, but I could be totally wrong in that. But yeah, it's really good stuff.
Ellie.
I started watching The Vampire Diaries.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Are you a teenage girl?
I try to connect to the various personality strands of myself. And sometimes that teenage girl inside me needs to squee over shirtless, pale vampire men.
Damn right.
Who knew? Watching the show, I was initially pretty off-put by it because it has a lot of Twilight vibes. It was definitely coming out in the midst of the Twilight domination of the multiplex. But I talked to Samantha Garrison about it, frequent guest on the show, and she described the show as more of a interview with the vampire thing with deep mythology. And once you get past the superficial Twilight similarities, it does become a lot more interesting of a series. I am enjoying it. It can just kind of rub me the wrong way sometimes just because Buffy's vampire rules are so ingrained in my mind that when they stake a vampire and he doesn't just burst into CGI dust, it can be momentarily confusing. But otherwise, I'm in the second season right now, and it's going pretty good. A lot of drama queens on this show. Very high drama.
It was CW, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yes, the drama.
Is that the one with Boone from Lost?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I feel good for him because he was very sad that he got kicked off the island so fast on Lost.
He was really good on Lost.
He is really good. He's also very handsome.
He got like 5 or 6 seasons on Diaries, right?
Well, considering that I'm in season 2, maybe he gets killed at the end of season 2, and I don't know. So let's keep the mystery alive for me. But good for him that white guy got another shot.
Yeah. Okay, that was everybody, right? I always feel weird when there's only 4 of us here. Like I feel like there should be one more person going.
We could just create a fake person. Do you want to do a voice?
No.
All right.
No,
You can just
Hey,
leave
y'all.
space in the recording so that John can dub it in later. And we go, ha ha ha, great point, John. John, you couldn't be more wrong.
What have you been doing, John? I have been a baby. I've been babying.
There's a baby.
Okay. So we'll move on to today's episode, which is the new Murder on the Orient Express, not the old Murder on the Orient Express, which I was going to do back when this one came out, and then I just decided not to because I don't know why. I wanted to do this one specifically because I really like Kenneth Branagh, and even though I don't really like all of his movies, I like the flavor that he brings to them, and I thought it'd be interesting to talk about a movie that he basically didn't want to change or do anything new with, and he just wanted to put his own stamp on it. And I thought that'd be an interesting conversation. So we'll see how that goes.
I'm really bummed I didn't watch this.
Yeah, it's
I would have liked to have had that conversation.
it's interesting.
It is
So-
very Branagh-y.
Oh, it's super.
And it's whether
super
do
Kenneth
you
Branagh.
like Kenneth Branagh,
Love his
then you'll like
Hamlet.
this movie. If you don't like Kenneth Branagh, then you didn't like this movie.
His Hamlet is my favorite Hamlet. So
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's like you're going for the top of a
that's
game
true.
there. So,
That's true.
But really quick, so this movie did very well. It did. It made over 300 million worldwide box office. They're already talking about doing a sequel to it of a different Agatha Christie novel
Really?
with him in the same thing. It's not officially sold yet, but it sounds like they're trying to push that forward. Review wise, it did okay. I think it was in the 2-star range, 40s on Metacritic when I looked at it last.
I didn't know this did well. I guess it did very poorly in our social circle. So.
Yeah, nobody I know really wanted to see it or even gave a shit about it until I made a few people watch it for the podcast. But yeah, it did well. I mean, it was a Christmas movie with a huge cast, and people wanted to see Daisy Ridley in something that wasn't Star Wars. So yeah. Before we go too far in it, though, we should do a 30-second breakdown. Elliot, do you think you can do this?
No, but it's not like I ever get a vote.
That's very true. At least you admit that. So here we go. The new Murder on the Orient Express. I can't even say the fucking title. In 30 seconds. Here we go.
An ensemble of actors gathers on a train to film a period piece. Shortly after the start of production, wife-beating cast member Johnny Depp is found brutally stabbed to death. Director Kenneth Branagh takes it upon himself to solve the mystery. It turns out that all the actors teamed up to kill Johnny Depp. Since Mordecai sucks so bad, Branagh just lets everybody go.
I don't feel like he had a lot of bias towards this movie going into it.
I feel like that was very helpful since I haven't seen the movie.
Yeah.
Now I understand it.
I think that's pretty good. Okay, so yeah, I'd say that pretty much sums up the whole thing. The only thing that I feel we should talk about before we go too far into it is, yes, the entire cast kills Johnny Depp.
which I didn't know.
Yeah, Chewie did not know when we sat
That
down.
was smart to cast Johnny Depp then, because
Yeah,
he's such a piece of shit.
Yeah, people really enjoy watching him get stabbed to death.
We did mention a few times while watching this movie. Gosh, remember when we all used to love you? Remember when you were like the best?
Yeah, we were excited about seeing you in
Yeah.
movies. That was a nice day.
I never would have thought I was going to be like, meh, towards your face.
But the one thing that was left out of the breakdown, although I still consider it a successful breakdown, is that they were all brought to the train specifically to kill Johnny Depp because
shit.
Johnny Depp killed a girl way back in the day, and these were all the people that were affected by that murder. So they all conspired to get on this train together to kill him.
It was really interesting for me because I never read the book, never saw the old movie, but I know about the Lindenberg baby. So
Yeah.
then when I'm watching this movie, I'm like, Agatha Christie just took the Lindenberg baby and made a
Ripped
movie.
from the headlines.
Yeah.
Yeah, ripped from the headlines.
Just like your
and went,
favorite
I'm
show,
gonna
Law
make
and
a
Order Special
diff-
Victims Unit.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a different story about this exact thing.
But the interesting thing about it is when the book came out, nothing like this had been done before. Like, this wasn't a twist. Like, this was a twist like nobody saw coming. Like, oh, you have to read that book. You'll never believe who the murderer is. Because he'd already had books, and it's always one guy who did the killer, and it's always about Poirot finding who killed whoever the murder was. And this one is like, oh, fucking, they all did it. And it's like, oh, wow. And even as you're watching, it's like they do a pretty good job, I think, of bouncing around of you think Daisy Ridley did it for a while, you think Leslie Odom Jr. did it for a while. They really hammer on
I just really started
Olaf,
getting...
what the fuck is his name? Josh Gad. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just like, how... This is too much of a coincidence at this point for every single one of these characters to have a personal tie-in to this one event.
Yeah.
So then eventually I even started wondering, did they all have a hand in this? So I started to be able to guess it, so it wasn't as much of a surprise at the end.
It sounds like you were sitting in the audience stroking your mustache.
But then it's
Like-
crazy to me that Perot, or Herc,
Poirot.
he didn't like being called Hercules. He just wanted to be called Herc.
Hercule,
Hercule?
I think.
Hercule.
Hercule.
So Hercules
How
without
he
the S.
didn't
Yeah.
guess it, like, because it started to get annoying as the movie went on a little bit. It'd be like, how are you not just like totally lambasted by the fact that all these people were connected to this other murder? Like, you have to assume they're all involved.
Well, I mean, I think they do a pretty good job lying. Like, the whole thing is, like, he very quickly figures out that every single person on the train is lying to him in one way or another, and he just can't figure out why. And then it's as he slowly but surely starts figuring out, it's like, oh, you're lying to me because you're from the same town as that guy. And it's like, as he slowly puts the pieces together, it kind of comes together. But it's something that was also done back in the other movie, and I think that's where I really want to start this conversation
I
before
didn't
we
really
kind of...
use the word lambasted correctly, by the way.
It's okay. So there's an argument to be made of if you want to remake a movie or a book, especially in this day and age, bring something new to the table. Like, we want to see something fresh, something new, and especially with something as classic as Murder in the Orient Express. Most people have seen it, not everyone, of course, but like it's pretty popular older film, and so therefore, when you sit down to watch it, as soon as you get to the part where they find the dead bodies, like, all the stab wounds are different, you go, oh, so this is just the same movie that I've seen, and now I'm spending the next hour and a half just waiting for you to get to the punchline, and I think that's a really interesting choice. I'm not sure if it's a good choice.
It was similar to when they did Psycho, essentially.
Shot for shot.
No, but Psycho at least was shot for shot. So like, there's an artistic argument there. I disagree with it. I think that was a terrible movie. But I can see like the goal behind that one of, I want to pay homage to that film, so I'm going to completely remake it verbatim. Whereas this one is just like, I just want to remake the story. And I get it, like Kenneth Branagh is a Shakespeare guy. Like, you brought that up. Like, Shakespeare is always the same for the most part. I mean, you might change the setting or like the time period, but it's pretty much the same thing. And since Branagh likes Shakespeare so much, it kind of makes sense, but I still think it's an odd choice for this movie. Am I alone in this?
I am curious. It would have been interesting for them to try to update it, but if they updated it, they'd have to somehow maybe like make an airplane or something. Like, a train doesn't really work so well today.
Sure.
So you're talking about like putting it in modern day?
I was just like, if you're going to change it, like, how would you change it?
Well, I think that we've had a lot of different iterations of Sherlock Holmes over the past several years, and I think that even when they don't take the character into the modern day, like in the Robert Downey Jr. version, they still find ways to separate that iteration from the previous
Well, yes,
versions.
we know that, but how do you think we should change this
You
one?
could put it on a cruise ship or a spaceship.
Or you could change who killed him. Like, I know that is the purpose of this story, but I still feel like if you watch Scream knowing who the killers are the whole time, it kind of ruins the mystery.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for this one. Like, you might still like...
Skeet Ulrich.
Yeah. Damn you,
No, but
Skeet!
I do love watching Matthew Lillard go, my mom and dad are going to be so mad.
I mean, that's all good stuff, but like, there's... As soon as I heard, because I really like, I wanted to see it because I like Kenneth Branagh, and I think he does very visually beautiful movies, and this one's right there.
And his sense of humor is wonderful.
Yeah, I really like his sense of humor, but like, I had hoped for something new, and as soon as I heard that the ending was the same, the drive for me to see it in theaters completely disappeared. Like, I didn't want to go spend $30 to go see something I already knew everything of.
Do you think I already know the answer to that. I was going to say, do you think the movie is made more for people who like aren't old enough to remember the old one, so now they're watching a new version, except this movie's not really for teenagers?
Not at all.
I
This
feel like
movie
that's
is-
what they were trying to pull in, though, because specifically, the thing that put a lot of people off was the trailer. When they
Trailer's
used Imagine Dragons, when they were introducing the characters in the trailer, and that song is so poppy, so popular with the now. It looked weird. It felt awkward with a period film for a trailer, and that's why I'm like, I feel like he was trying to bring in the teenagers somehow.
But I don't think that was Branagh. I think that was the production company going holy shit, we
who's
made
gonna
a movie.
see this?
We made a movie for 80-year-old people. Let's get some teenagers. Kids like Imagine Dragons. And it's just another advertising company out of touch with the youths.
Yeah.
But like, because there is something to be said. Like, they did go for a younger cast. Like, they went for a guy out of Hamilton. They went for Daisy Ridley. They went for Josh Gad. Like, the cast is just like who's
It's
who.
an amazing
It's
cast.
a very good cast.
And a few times we're like, Olaf, no.
Yeah. And my only complaint with the cast is I wish the girl from Sing Street was in it more, because I really like her, but she has a very bit part. But yeah, is there anything, Elliot? You haven't said much. What does that bother you at all?
You said you didn't like the movie.
Yeah, my beginning with this story was in film school. Did you have to read the Sidney Lumet book, Making
Yep.
Movies?
Yep.
He blows the ending in that book.
He sure did.
So, I mean, the movie
thing I
was
never
30
read
years
that book.
old by that point, so no big deal or anything. I wasn't aghast.
Yeah.
But it was just like, oh, okay, that's how that story ends. So definitely when I watched the original 1974 version a couple years later, it definitely didn't have that suspense of like, oh my God, who did it? Because they all did it.
Yeah.
So I've never been really electrified with this story. Watching this new one, I actually saw it for the first time about a month ago.
Okay.
And then revisiting it now, it just feels like with a lot of Branagh's work, you guys have talked about his Shakespeare adaptations, but definitely in recent years, he's very much been readapting things. He did Cinderella. He did Thor.
Yep.
Like he brought Thor into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He remade Sleuth. He did a new version of Jack Ryan. It's just like
I forgot he did the Jack Ryan thing.
Yeah, it's very easy to forget. But he's just kind of recycling old things, it feels like. And with a lot of these movies, I feel like he has a very handsome directorial style where it looks like it has a high level of gloss on it.
Yeah.
And it feels like high level studio product, but it's often not emotionally engaging on a high level. With Murder on the Express, watching it this time, I made sure to put subtitles on because everybody has different accents and they're spouting out all these places and names that aren't familiar to my American ears.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a lot more comprehensible by reading the subtitles. But even then, once you get into the convoluted backstory with Johnny Depp and he has like a fake name and there's all these ties between all the other characters, it kind of reminded me of a Shane Black movie a little bit, where the backstory is just very loopy and convoluted. And sometimes I just wish they could iron that out a little bit. But I might be alone in that front, judging by your eyebrows.
No. I don't disagree with you. I kind of wish there's a little bit more explanation to a lot of stuff here.
Yeah. So I just feel like it's a movie that is very middle of the road. It does exactly what it set out to do, just represent the story, but without adding any significant electricity to make it feel like a movie that's important to be made. It just feels like, well, this is something that all the numbers say that this can be the classy adult prestige choice for studio blockbuster during the Christmas season.
Yeah, it really just has this feeling of like, what if Kenneth Branagh made Murder on the Orient Express? Like, it's not like a new, exciting take on it. It's just like, what if it had his brand of paint on it?
It was like the Cinderella movie he made.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
Just like, this is exactly the Cinderella you know, except now Kenneth Branagh is the puppet master.
Yeah, and was he in Cinderella? I didn't see that. Yeah, the thing is, I think I enjoy Kenneth Branagh for the most part.
Artemis Lovelace.
Yeah, like but I honestly think his films are better when he's in them. And I know that's exactly what he wants to hear, and I'm not just trying to be a...
Jack Ryan was not better with him in it.
I didn't see Jack Ryan because
he's listening right now, and he's like, thank you, Brian. I agree.
But I've always...
That Artemis Lovelace name drop, that was kidding. I want to make that clear, because you didn't bounce off that.
I haven't seen it, so I disagreed with you.
That was Wild Wild West.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
We actually made the joke a couple times that
forgot the name.
Kenneth Branagh's ego was so big we couldn't handle Johnny Depp's ego in the movie, and that's why he got killed.
Well, it's like I've often made the joke of like, if you ask Kenneth Branagh who's the greatest actor in the entire world, he'll answer Kenneth Branagh. And it's like, you can kind of see that, but at the same time, I like that for not all the time, but a lot of the time, he can kind of match his word. And like, I think that's most exemplified in this movie, because in a movie full of wonderful actors, he's a standout performer.
Yeah, as like a 40-year-old man, he was a convincing 19-year-old Hamlet.
Yeah, like he's a very good actor. I'd love to see him in a play because I hear he's amazing on stage.
I'd love to see him in a giant robot that resembles a tarantula.
Well, you're in
luck. Wearing some very good fake facial hair.
Yeah. But it's like when he got cast in Harry Potter, I was like, holy shit, you couldn't have found a better person to play that character. Like, that was like, that was like the dream casting. They were saying, fuck, what's his name? 9 months.
Hugh Grant.
Hugh
Hugh
Grant.
Grant. And, like, that was like who everyone wanted them to get. I'm like, no, Hugh Grant. They said
Hugh
Kenneth
Grant-
Branagh. I'm like,
That would have
holy
been too
shit.
obvious. Hugh Grant would just been
It was
playing
actually
Hugh
a
Grant.
very good thing that Hugh Grant never made it into Harry Potter.
Yeah.
He takes himself too seriously.
But I was kind of wanting to say something, even though, again, have not seen this movie. Though I feel like it's interesting to make a remake that brings nothing new to the table, because like Creed is essentially a remake of Rocky, but it's made with a more diverse cast and it's made for a more modern audience. Ghostbusters, love it or hate it, I think it's great. I think if you hate it because there's women in it, fuck you. But Ghostbusters was not a remake, but a similar story told again with a different perspective. Like there's a lot of people complain about Force Awakens, but Force Awakens is somewhat of a retelling of A New Hope, but from a different perspective with different characters and a different direction. So yeah, I think that's a very good thing to like update a story for a modern audience, to add a more diverse cast, to do things that you couldn't have done back then. But if you're not going to do that, I just don't. Yeah, I'm having a hard time figuring out what the point of that would be.
And that was the major like theme through the reviews, because I read, I think, almost every review I could find in Metacritic to try to figure out, because I don't think it's a bad movie. Like, I don't think it's a poorly made film at all. I just don't think it's very special.
Like King's Speech.
Yeah, well, I think King's Speech is probably a better film. I'm not a huge fan of King's Speech, but like it's just.
But you really just was like, this is the type of movie we're making.
Yeah.
And we're not going to step anywhere out to make it anything more than that.
Yeah. So I kind of had these weird, just sort of, not really problems with it, because like my dad called us in the middle of the movie and I had to pause it, and he's like, "Oh, what are you watching?" I'm like, "Oh, Murder on the Orient Express." He's like, "Oh, I want to see it. How is it?" I'm like, "I'm enjoying it so far. Like, I don't really think you need to see it, but I don't feel like I'm wasting my time watching it." And I don't know if that's a bigger insult than I mean it to be, of it's just kind of bland. But I don't think there's really anything wrong with it. I mean, how many filmmakers have tried to make the greatest thing ever and made shit? At least this guy made something okay.
It's kind of. Sorry, you can go first.
Outside of the actual story, in saying that it's bland, for me visually, I thought it was fantastic.
I don't think Kenneth Branagh can make something that's not visually interesting. I
'Cause
don't think that's in his wheelhouse.
He even got himself a hero shot with a sun going down behind a snow-capped mountain of him walking on top of the train. Like, this is an epic shot that you're not really expecting in what is you assume would be like a bottle movie where they're in the one cabin the whole time or whatnot. I mean, like they made it kind of large in this very confined space of them being stuck on a train.
Yeah, it's a very well shot. The sets are great. The costumes are awesome.
And
I really like. I like his fake
for
mustache.
The mustache, for the most part, except when they did some close-ups, looked legit.
Yeah, it looks like a guy who's way too obsessed with his facial hair. Like, and I liked all that, and I really like Kenneth Branagh in it. And I kind of want to talk about his character a little bit, because it was a sticking point for a lot of people that he is not like the character in the book. Like, his mannerisms and his characteristics are, but this guy's known for being short and fat, and they cast Kenneth Branagh, who's not going to do that to himself because he likes being
He's
handsome.
not that type of actor.
Hercule Poirot is the name of a short fat guy.
Yeah, exactly. And this guy is not a short fat guy, but I think Kenneth Branagh did a good enough job with the character that it still felt like the same guy to me. Like, he still had this really like charming wit about him, and this sort of like tired, like, yes, I can pretty much solve any crime. And I really like that about him. And he's kind of done with it. Like, he's like, I just want to be happy. Like,
He
I just
keeps trying to go on holiday.
Yeah, he just wants to take a vacation. He just wants to go somewhere and read his book. And like, when
It's Dickens.
And
his
everyone's
Dickens,
like,
sorry.
no, there's been a murder.
What's he reading?
Did
Tale
they
of Two
specify?
Cities.
Was it Tale of Two Cities?
Yeah, and he kept
What's it
laughing
short?
historically. And I'm like, no one's ever told me that book's funny.
It's not funny, but I just like, he has this like fit of giggles when he's reading it, and he's just having so much fun. He's like, "Oh, Dickens," and it's
What the
like,
fuck is he laughing at?
right?
Decapitations.
But I really like him in the movie, and I think if it wasn't for him personally, I don't think I would have been invested in it at all. Like, I think it would have been like, oh, it's kind of cool watching these actors play these like very stereotypical like characters, not stereotypical, but like established characters, and just kind of making it as their own as they can, but they really can't. But Branagh brought me into the film, and actually I had no problem watching the whole thing because he's in every scene. Most of it's him interviewing people throughout the film, and I thought he was engaging enough and had enough chemistry with enough people that I thought the movie was watchable, which is, again, more insulting than I mean it to be. But out of all of them, I think his chemistry with Daisy Ridley was the best, and I really liked seeing her in something that wasn't Star Wars, and I'm really interested to see what else she does. I know she has a movie with Doug Liman coming up, and I think that's pretty cool. But anybody else have a standout character?
I mean, I love Michelle Pfeiffer.
She's always great.
Like, you can never really do better than her. And she plays a character that, I mean, I was not familiar with, so it was interesting to learn that she was an actress playing a role to murder this guy. So to me, that was a big reveal, more so than who killed him. That was a bigger reveal, that she ended up being the actor grandma to the girl that got murdered.
Was it
Is
the
that
grandma or
what
the
she
mother?
was?
I always forget.
No, the mother died.
That's right.
Because she ended up going into premature labor, and then her and the baby died. So she lost first her granddaughter, and then her daughter and her other grandchild. So they talked about how she lost the most. So that's why she was why she planned the entire murder or whatnot. And just watching her, actually, when she shifted stopped being she was playing like a ditzy gold digger type character from America who was just trying to find another husband. And she was just kind of purposely irritating Perot the whole time.
Yeah.
And then she turns out to be this calculating, wounded woman. And I thought that was very interesting.
And it's another role that, like, I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's perfectly in her wheelhouse. Like, that is something that she can just nail. Like, it's one of those, like, just like, kind of like dream casting moments. Like, oh, this sort of role would be great for Michelle Pfeiffer. I wonder if she's available. And perfect.
She's just coming hot off Mother.
Yeah. She's having a really good
revival.
Yeah, kind of. I didn't want to call it a revival because I don't like that she kind of disappeared for a little while, but yeah, she did.
I don't really think of it as a revival. I just think of it as she's picking her roles. She's one of those few women that aged into herself and people continually respect and still consider her beautiful, and she gets to pick her roles like any other respected male actor gets to.
Yeah.
Her Catwoman is still the best Catwoman.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
That costume is fucking rad too. Speaking of which, how are costumes in this movie, everybody?
Gorgeous.
It's Kenneth Branagh. Like
everything production wise in this movie is top notch.
I really like I like there's a really big emphasis on like this kimono that he sees running out of the room when Johnny Depp is murdered. And I like that it's like it's so like it's very bright and red and yellow and like has this really stark look to it. And it's very grabbing, and then they kind of forget about it for a little while, but like it's always like,
he keeps asking all the women, "Do you have another dressing gown?"
Yeah, and they did such a good job like hitting it that like when you see it, it just sticks in your brain. So although they're not talking about it, you know it's still something that's coming back. And they do this really well throughout the entire movie and the book, where it's like they show you something and then don't talk about it, but since you're the audience, you're kind of playing detective along with him. And they do that a few times throughout the movie where you'll catch people in lies that he might be catching internally, but he doesn't bring it out. So the kimono was one, and that was specifically because of the costume. And then there's another part where Josh Gad blatantly lies to him about something that has already been said earlier in the film, and he doesn't call it out. So if you've been paying attention, it's like, oh, there's one. And it's like, he did it really fun. I feel like he never fully cashed in on it.
Which I was just confused by, not even that it was a lie, because the line was, he had some weird views on Stalin. And I'm like, what are weird views on Stalin? Like, can we investigate that for a little while? I want to know what these views are.
But yeah, so it's Josh Gad, when he's first interviewed, he's talking about Leslie Odom Jr., and he's like, well, you know, I hung out all night with him, but he has some weird views on Stalin. And then later when he's interviewing Leslie Odom Jr., he's like, oh yeah, I hung out with him all night. He had some weird views on Stalin, though. And it's like...
And I'm like, what are weird views on Stalin? What does that mean?
It was interesting.
He was like, I thought he was a stand-up guy and totally didn't murder a lot of people.
I think Stalin is an alien who came through the Stargate.
Those are some weird views on Stalin. But otherwise, I really like the costumes. I really like the train itself. Like the train station, all this stuff. Like we were watching it, and it's like they spent, I think, $55 million on it. It looks like they spent way more. Like they used every dime they could in the best way possible. Like the whole time, it looks real and lived in and like tactile. And this thing that I feel we're starting to lose the more and more that like these like big comic book movies come out, where they're just like, yeah, we don't need a set because we'll just throw it in CGI. And I feel like more movies are doing that. So when you go back to like a Kenneth Branagh era and you look at like real sets and real costumes and real people and real extras, like thousands of extras in a train sequence, it's kind of nice. It's like, it's refreshing to actually see it. And even though I don't think the movie's as good as some other ones, it's still like, it's more pleasurable to watch because it's nice to see film being made like that still.
No matter how great they can render something in a computer, your brain still knows you can't touch it.
Yeah.
It's automatic. It's an instinctual thing. So you'll be watching a movie, and if you know you can't touch it, it won't affect you as much as a real set will.
Yeah, and also an art department has subtle, like you find weird shit that you just put somewhere, or that makes it feel real. Whereas a computer, everything is intentionally like chosen. Art department people will frequently just find a thing and throw it in the scene, so it feels less like everything is planned and more like a lived-in world.
Yeah.
And they definitely use the train. They don't do like the Life Aquatic of Steve Zissou, where they like split the set so they could kind of have the camera traveling up and down and there wasn't any like interference with the walls. There are definitely a lot of tracking shots in here where the camera will pan across the side of the train as Kenneth Branagh is walking down the corridor.
Yeah.
And you just see the glimpses through the window. And also when Kenneth Branagh is speaking to all of the passengers gathered in the train lobby or whatever, the camera will move through the panes of glass to cast different reflections of the characters.
My God. I actually loved that sequence because that is a sequence when they're trying to decide who killed him, like right after they found out that he's murdered, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
I think they do it 2 or 3 times, but the first time.
But they use fractals on with the windows in that shot, which is giving everyone a double image, which is amazing because then you're hinting at like a double agenda or double identity or whatnot the entire time. Like that is some good filmmaking right there.
Yeah, I don't feel like there's that big a ticking clock or anything in this story, but definitely the way they shoot the train, it feels like a very enclosed, tight,
claustrophobic
space.
Yeah.
I mean, they break that sometimes, like when Branagh's just walking around on top of the train. But for a lot of the scenes, it just
his
feels
epic
like
hero shot.
Yeah, why is he walking on top of the train to solve a murder?
It's there. I guess we never mentioned this. There's an avalanche that derails the train, so they're trying to solve the murder before the team can clear the tracks, because then they'll all get away.
Well, it's something where they say they have to solve the murder before the police get there, or the team who's gonna clear away the avalanche, because they're gonna see there was a murder and just assume that the black guy did it,
Yeah.
or the Hispanic guy did it.
Yeah.
He's Hispanic? I thought
What was it? Mendez? Was that his name, or was it something else?
he was Jewish.
Possibly. But they're assuming that the people are going to play on their racism to throw an innocent man into the slammer. So Poirot has to solve the mystery in order to prevent that from happening. But I feel like that's just paid lip service to, and you don't really feel that
No,
much.
definitely. It doesn't feel.
There's not a lot of urgency.
No, and I feel like there could have been a little bit more. Like there was a couple moments of like desperation when he like first accuses both Josh Gad and then later accuses Daisy Ridley, where it felt like he was more so like desperate of like, I feel like I'm right, and I liked those moments. But I agree with you. I wish there was something more of like, somehow they could have shown it more of like, this needs to happen now. Like, we need to solve this now.
Yeah.
It's not there at all. You're right.
Yeah. Just getting back to some of the points that you guys brought up, going off the cam work and the look of the film and how like expensive it feels. This is really a movie that I think does a disservice to watch it at home. This really feels like a movie theater movie, or at least a big screen movie, because Branagh really chooses a lot of shots that he'll have wide shots of all the cast members, and everyone looks so tiny on a TV screen, and it just feels like at one point the cast recreates The Last Supper when they're sitting at a table in a train tunnel.
I thought that was funny.
And it's just like, if you were seeing that on a big screen, it would be so rich in detail, like seeing what each individual actor is doing in that moment. And watching it on a television screen, it just feels really squished. You know, so I think that he definitely made this movie for the big screen experience. And so it's good that it did well during its Christmas. Was this an IMAX?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, but it definitely feels like a big movie, even though it has, you know, this is something that you see on CBS. during prime time. You know, this
Yeah.
kind of mystery.
I think that type of setup also speaks to his experience on the stage, because that was definitely something that I could have seen like on a Broadway production with that long, expansive table.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. I mean, I think every movie he's ever made feels a little bit like theater. And I think that's
Yeah.
just because that's who he is. Like, that's what he knows.
When the Destroyer was stomping through that Nevada town, I was just like, this is like waiting for Godard.
High art.
Yeah, the best. There was something you were just talking about that made me want to. Oh, there's a shot that we haven't called out that I really want to because it was my favorite in the movie, and it's similar to what you're saying earlier. And it's when the first time Kenneth Branagh boards the train, and it has this. It's the only long take in the movie. There's long shots, but this one's the only like real long one, and it follows him through the train station. And then he gets on the train, and it doesn't follow him onto the train. It just follows him from the outside of the train as he goes back through the entire length of the train, and is just following him outside of it. And I thought it was a really cool, very well done shot.
I liked it because it never lingered on any of the other characters, so you never really got any foreshadowing. Like it felt like every character at that moment, including Johnny Depp's character, was on the same level.
Do you remember when they discovered Johnny Depp's body and the camera is like hanging overhead looking down?
It didn't
And
look like
so-
Johnny Depp at all.
Well, before you even see Johnny Depp, though, they're like outside the cabin and they're like looking into the room and talking about what's inside. And it feels like there's what I was talking about, where it's not like the Life Aquatic. Like they didn't have a breakable train so they could get the camera in certain places. It felt like because there are three guys like right outside this cabin entranceway, like there's no place for the camera to go for it to actually be able to show these actors performing and give you a clean shot of what's inside the cabin.
Yeah,
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I totally.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, so it's just that's what I feel about him with the movie, like really sticking to that location and committing to it. Like we're not gonna cheat in terms of getting like really clear camera shots.
Yeah, and it like I said it earlier, it really plays to the claustrophobic of it. Like it really makes it feel like we are on top of each other, and there's a problem, and it could explode at any minute.
Would you say like the biggest action sequence is when he's like chasing Josh Gad?
It
Really,
is.
the only action
Through-
sequence.
What was happening in that moment? Josh Gad, I just remember Josh Gad like jumping down levels or something, and then he falls and hits the snowy ground.
Yeah, he was trying to run. He was trying to burn the evidence that he had been stealing money from Johnny Depp because
Okay.
he thought that would be another thing to implement him in the movie, and or in the crime. And then while trying to run away, they had to throw some version of an action sequence in there, I guess.
Something chase-wise to liven up the teenagers, you know?
Yeah.
All those teenagers who are watching this movie.
Well, they tried. Remember, Imagine Dragons were in the
Imagine
trailer.
The kids these days, they love the Imagine Dragons.
Yeah. I mean, it's still 5 years ago, right?
Do you think that if
thunder.
you watched this
Hear the
movie when
thunder.
you were do you think if you watched this movie while you were a teenager you would have enjoyed it?
I mean, I saw the original as a teenager and I enjoyed it, but the original is a better film.
I feel like, okay, not if you were a teenager, but like if you were an average, ordinary American teenager.
Some of them, but a lot of them would
No,
rather
I
see A
think you're
Quiet
right.
Place.
Yeah, a lot of them would rather go see Star Wars, which was out at the same time. Like, this movie was a very minuscule audience that was really just hoping that they'd come to see their favorite actors in a movie.
This is very much for like grandparents and older adults. Like this feels like almost like a theatrical revival of a beloved play.
Sure.
Where it's just like, yeah, like you've seen this a million times. Like here's the latest acting troupe who's putting it on.
Yeah, it's like, oh, Cats is back on Broadway.
I don't know,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Nothing brings those teenagers in like Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like if you go see Our Town at the community theater, it's not like you're going to be like, whoa, they really redefined Our Town. And, like, really added a whole new dimension. It's pretty much just going to be Our Town.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you've seen the original Murder on the Orient Express and you watch this one, it's just like, yeah, that was pretty much Murder on the Orient Express. Like,
Yeah.
you get exactly what you were expecting, but it just doesn't have that freshness to it.
Yeah, you get what you're expecting, not what you're hoping for.
Again, I would go back to like Hamlet again. I mean, he managed to bring some new shit to that Hamlet. it was a very it was Hamlet, but also there were interpretations, there were changes made that didn't necessarily change the content, but the way he shot them was changed, how you interpret the scene. So you can still, even Kenneth Branagh's done that even with Shakespeare.
Yeah, even with Thor, he did.
Yeah,
he definitely brought his own flavor to Thor, at least a little bit.
A flavor that was completely maintained for the rest of Thor's tenure in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Absolutely, everyone's like, "Yep, this is Thor from here on out."
Yes, no, we cracked the mold on the first try.
Is there anything we haven't really hit in this movie that you guys would want to talk about? That
I feel like comparing it to Sherlock is something that I was thinking about. That's
Sherlock,
a show,
the Benedict Cumberbatch?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's a show that really tries to do different things to shake it up and not have it just be Benedict Cumberbatch standing there and just having words spew out of his mouth. They really try to play around with presentation on that show. With this movie, you'll have a scene. Willem Dafoe plays a very arch German character.
Yep.
Honestly,
Austrian.
at times I forgot Willem Dafoe
I was
even
about
a
to say
character.
Willem Dafoe was in this movie.
His
Very
character
minuscule.
is so in the background, you forget he exists.
Well, Penelope Cruz is in this movie.
Penelope
and
Cruz is in this movie.
Yeah.
It feels
I feel like she gets more screen time.
Yeah, but it's hard with a cast this size to spotlight everybody appropriately.
Scheduling must have been a real bitch.
Yeah.
It's just kind of they got everybody for those group shots.
Yeah.
And then it's all right, Penelope, let's knock out your solo shots in a day, if that. And with Willem Dafoe, he's this arch racist Austrian officer or professor. And then Kenneth Branagh's talking to him, and he's like, you mispronounced Turin. You should have said Turin. And then Willem Dafoe's completely like, oh my God, you're right. This is my entire thing. And it just feels like this isn't Eureka. It's just you mispronounced this one little word, and then the truth spills forth. And it just doesn't feel like in a really great mystery story, even to get off mysteries for a second, but A Few Good Men.
Sure.
And that scene in the final courtroom scene, I've seen that movie a lot of times. So I love just listening to it and catching the moments where Jack Nicholson fucks up, where he says the wrong thing. And Tom Cruise, he hears it, and then you see him processing it, and he's stuck. He's not sure what to do. And then there's just a click in his brain, and then he drives forward with getting the verdict he wants on the trial. And I feel like with Murder on the Orient Express, this version, you have Kenneth Branagh kind of just standing there and staring. And as an audience member, I'm looking at the mustache the whole time. And then it'll just be oh, you said Turin instead of Turin. And it just feels so muted and low key, at every level.
Yeah, I think what they were trying to go for was the whole not showing those moments and showing more of he's so smart that he caught the things that you didn't catch. And I'm not saying they succeeded in that, but I think that's kind of what they were more aiming for.
I mean, this is also the movie where at the beginning, Poirot steps in a pile of shit, and then he's like, oh, it's off balance. He takes his foot out, and then he puts his other foot in the shit.
Yeah.
So I feel like they...
Sexy.
At
Kenneth Branagh stepping in shit. This movie sounds awesome.
He wasn't
really
barefoot,
see it.
to clarify. All our listeners who are desperately Google image searching. But
There's somebody out there who's really into the idea of Kenneth Branagh stepping barefoot into shit.
Gross.
they were just this after the hype isn't as fantastic as they usually are. And then it's they get to the Kenneth Branagh stepping in shit, and it's this is what I've been waiting for.
This is what I needed.
They're jerking it right now.
There was a little bit with sapphic love stories that Emily was talking about, but there could have been more feces.
Okay, so I think it's time to move into quotes. Really quick before we do, we had to take a very short break there because Chewie, who is pregnant, cannot stand the heat of this room and had to excuse herself. She is super pregnant, and that is very understandable.
This episode is falling apart.
Yeah, this episode is... I think it's still a good conversation, but we went from having 5 people to 4 people to 3 people to 2.5.
It's almost like an Agatha Christie play.
So we'll wrap these things up pretty quick. I'm not even going to do a review system today just to try to get this thing done quicker for everybody. But I have to say my favorite quote of this movie because I think it was just incredible, and hopefully Elliot has one that he enjoyed as well. The moment when he first comes onto the train that I mentioned earlier ends with him at the cabin that he has to share with Josh Gad. And Josh Gad did not know that he was getting on the train and is very confused that I have to share a cabin with a detective. We're planning on murdering a guy. So he says, we are, how you say, bunkies? Like we're sharing a room. And Josh Gad goes, really? And just looks at him and goes, I'm equally disappointed in you. Oh, this room's nice. And then walks into the room. And I think it's just a really great moment to show his sense of humor and everything. And I enjoyed it. Did you have a quote you like as well?
Let's go with the one where Poirot is at a loss for words and he's stammering. Is it about Johnny Depp's books? Like they're full of falsehoods, and he goes, "It's full of the how do you say the chocolate, the fudge? It's full of fudge. It's full of the fudge." That was something where it's like, all right, man.
Yeah.
Like if that's your nomenclature, I'll respect it.
Yeah, I thought it was fun.
Yeah, Emily.
I again did not see this movie,
Perfect.
which I feel really bad about. I'm very ashamed,
Improvise.
everyone. I did not do my homework. No, I have a quote. On the poster, it says it is lavish, razzle-dazzle escapism.
I would love to see a movie that reflected that tagline.
Yeah, it's not quite there.
So that's my
There-
quote from the poster.
There
That's what I saw.
There is a minute level of razzle, no dazzle.
Yeah,
Is
there's,
it
Absence
escapism?
of dazzle.
yeah.
Is it lavish? Seems lavish.
There's some lavish nature to it.
I mean, if you like Suits, like it's way more
do
Suits
like
than,
Suits.
and even Daisy Ridley and Michelle Pfeiffer. Do they have, aside from the kimono, which you lovingly spotlighted,
a
do
good
they
kimono.
have any like particular wardrobe? They're like buttoned up the entire time.
Yeah, no,
Are there
really.
any musical numbers?
Cold.
No, there could have been.
No,
He's done a
there's
musical
not.
before. He doesn't do bad with
Razzle
musicals.
dazzle.
Yeah,
would be-
they did not give us the old razzle dazzle. Yeah.
All right.
All right. So,
This is a resounding success.
yeah, the best episode we've ever had. We might be finding a new location to record this thing, so we no longer kill my poor wife.
Did you guys see Whiteout?
No,
Do you know what that movie is?
I know it has Kate Beckinsale. in it.
Kate
That's about
Beckinsale?
it.
Yeah, so that's a movie where it takes place in Antarctica, which the subtitles helpfully tell us is like the coldest place on Earth.
Thank you.
And this is a movie starring Kate Beckinsale, so like her first scene, the entire movie is taking place in Antarctica, you know.
Right.
But it's the producers have Kate Beckinsale, so they're like, hey, her first scene in the movie, she's gonna walk into her room in the Arctic base, strip down, get in the shower, take a shower.
Of
like
course.
you're gonna get that first thing in the movie to get the audience their money's worth. And Kenneth Branagh, to his credit, we do not get any ridiculous shower scenes in this movie for any
Yeah.
member of his cast.
Yeah.
And I think Josh Gad would have been game. So that is admirable restraint.
I'm going to bring this thing to a close because my God. All right, so a real quick round of plugs. You can find us athpod.com. You can find our new show there as well, which is Venture Bros, the Venture Brothers podcast. Emily, you have
You can buy my 10th Doctor inspired cosplay code on Etsy. My store is called Emily Blake Sews. So if you want to cosplay as the new 13th Doctor, you can buy your coat from me. Don't buy it from Cos Daddy because that coat's a piece of shit.
do you make them for only women or for men and women?
I make them for anybody
Nice. So you can get some
because
good,
it's a pretty oversized coat, so
Yeah.
it's really easy to make for any sized person.
very nice. Elliot, anything to plug?
Yeah, so got some things cooking up slowly but surely, but for now you can continue to enjoy my sci-fi audio play Beyond School. It's a series about a teenage girl who battles evil aliens. Beyond School on iTunes and Blogspot. And then you can also follow me on Twitter at Elliot S. Campos.
Perfect. All right, well, thank you guys very much for coming on, staying on in this sauna of a garage.